Imagine a spending spree of this magnitude. Hundreds of millions of dollars spent on pink diamonds, luxury properties, and nine-figure super yachts like the Equanimity. This capital flowed directly into Hollywood, funding high-stakes parties with Paris Hilton and providing the literal financing for the production of The Wolf of Wall Street. The man behind this wealth was Joe Low, a baby-faced Wharton graduate who held no official government title. Extracting $4.5 billion required more than just greed. It took the cooperation of a prime minister and a total exploitation of the global financial system. The money was supposed to stay here, in Malaysia. In 2009, Prime Minister Najib Razak established One Malaysia Development Berhad, or 1MDB. He presented it as a legitimate sovereign wealth fund designed to drive infrastructure and economic growth. Yet, the fund soon began functioning less like a national investment vehicle and more like a private bank account for a small circle of insiders. This was the start of a sovereign wealth heist. To steal on this scale, modern criminals don't use force. They utilize the unregulated dark corners of international banking to hide their tracks. The playbook began between 2009 and 2011. Joe Low convinced the Malaysian government to invest heavily in a joint venture with a company called PetroSaudi. This diagram shows the initial flow. Over $1 billion was routed from 1MDB into a Swiss bank account held under the name Good Star Limited. While the fund claimed this was a legitimate investment, Good Star Limited was actually secretly owned by Joe Low. This phase succeeded because international banks processed these massive transfers while accepting false ownership information, failing their most basic due diligence. In 2012, as 1MDB sought to expand, it brought in the most elite institutions on Wall Street. Goldman Sachs arranged 2 bond issues totaling $3.5 billion, a deal led by bankers Tim Leissner and Roger Ng. For arranging this debt, Goldman Sachs collected $600 million in fees. The diversion here involved an almost identical fake shell company. $1.36 billion was sent to a British Virgin Islands entity called Abar BVI, designed to mimic a legitimate investment firm. Despite warnings from internal compliance, senior executives continued with the deals, seemingly prioritized by the lucrative nature of the fees. Wall Street's own systems of legitimacy were utilized to facilitate the movement of these stolen funds across the globe. By 2013, the grift entered its final form, with a third Goldman bond issue for $3 billion. From those proceeds, $1.26 billion was immediately diverted into a Singapore-based account called Tanor Finance Corporation. To protect the money, the group utilized the core concept of money laundering, layering. Layering is the rapid movement of cash through multiple global jurisdictions to systematically obscure the original source of the funds. Once layered, the money landed cleanly in the personal accounts of Prime Minister Najib Razak and Joe Low's associates. This intentional complexity creates a thick fog that paralyzes regulators, making the theft effectively invisible as it happens. The system finally reacted in 2015. Journalistic leaks triggered the U.S. Department of Justice to launch the largest asset forfeiture case in its history. For Prime Minister Najib Razak, the reckoning was severe: a 15-year prison sentence, a $2.8 billion fine, and a $1.3 billion civil judgment for the losses he orchestrated. The financial institutions faced their own collapse. Swiss authorities stripped banks of their licenses and forced them to exit the country. Goldman Sachs admitted to criminal wrongdoing and paid $2.9 billion in a deferred prosecution agreement with the DOJ. The fallout continued into May 2026, when the bank agreed to pay another $500 million to settle a massive shareholder lawsuit. But while the political and corporate enablers faced historic penalties, the architect himself, Van 26, he made a startling move, officially requesting a presidential pardon from Donald Trump. If granted, this pardon would remove his U.S. criminal charges, despite his role in masterminding a $4.5 billion theft. The 1MDB scandal exposes a chilling vulnerability in the global financial architecture. It suggests that the entire system remains uniquely susceptible to those who understand how to navigate its darkest shadows. For a player with enough shell companies and the right connections, a nation's treasury is simply the largest available pool of liquidity.